So hey friends, welcome to this week's video. Sorry for the delays, work's been crazy, but finally we're going into the holidays, so I have some time to myself. I've gotten myself sort of a hotel so I can focus in on, wrapping up the last bit of work, but also shooting, getting a different sort of view on things, so it's not just my room. And it's close to my home, so, once I finish this week in the hotel, I can head home, hang out with my family, and do all that sort of stuff. But I do appreciate you guys being patient with me. The Beats Fit Pro is what we're going over this week. And, it's been quite a few weeks that I've been testing these. But in terms of this week's video, this is what we'll be focusing on. A lot of you guys have been asking about this, and with good reason. These headphones, too long didn't read. Super admirable. But I do want to make sure I do the normal paces and run through all of the sort of things to make sure that it fits your personal needs. And, if you guys want to pick them up, see if you like them. So let's get into these and start with the specs and build. Okay, here I usually do a specification breakdown with animated GIFs, sync to the beat, and all that fancy stuff. However, Beats doesn't provide crap in terms of a spec sheet, so I can't tell you the type of drivers or their sizes or the normal details that I tell you guys in these reviews. So on screen are the specs that I don't heavily emphasize in the rest of this review. Hopefully this doesn't handicap you too much, but this is all I got. The Fits Pro packaging is pretty simplistic, coming with the unit, manual, extra tips, and a small charging cable. It's relatively minimal and there's not too much waste, so that's appreciated. The earbuds come in black, white, stone purple, and a sage gray that you see here. I chose the gray due to its more muted aesthetic, and I like the fact that the green interior brings a splash of color for contrast. The case, while more chunky than competitors, is much smaller than the Powerbeats Pro, and still relatively pocketable. The case holds 3 additional charges, which can equate to 30 hours depending on how you use your ANC. Beats also has its own fast fuel charging feature that will get you 1 hour playback in 5 minutes. You can use these USB-C to charge, however this case does not have wireless charging, so people that like to use those sort of charging pads will probably be disappointed here. In addition to the case, you don't have any sort of waterproofing to boost its durability either. And the last pet peeve of mine is that this case lid kind of feels wobbly and I'd be concerned of long-term resilience, so handle this with care. Other than that, the case does its job. The earbuds sit nicely with strong magnets, and the earbud detection is solid, so you won't have your earbuds playing inside the case. In terms of the earbuds, you can get about 7 hours max with them if you don't use ANC. Drop that by about 60 to 80 minutes if you turn ANC on, and likely more for you Apple people that use spatial audio. The earbuds can quick charge for 5 minutes for an hour of playback and be fully topped up after 90 minutes. Other features include Apple's skin detection sensor, which provides more accurate in-ear detection for automatic and play functions. And finally, y'all iPhone peeps get the added benefits of the H1 chip integration. In terms of comfort, the earbuds fit extremely well in ear. They are snug and form nicely into the canals. They're extremely lightweight, and the ear tips have a good seal, and the controls are responsive and do not force the earbud out of the ears, nor shove them uncomfortably into the canals. While the wings are attached and there are no sizing options, they're extremely flexible. They hold firm in ear without creating additional pressure points. They are quite well designed and have a nice soft touch to them to prevent any sort of irritation. The Beats Fit Pro definitely live up to their name. They fit like a glove in ear and are not obtrusive. Over long listening sessions, you'll likely forget that they're there. That's just how comfortable they were during my testing. Now that we've talked about casual fit, let's check the active fit. The Beats Fit Pro are IPX4 rated, meaning that you'll be able to resist sweat and splashes. Not the highest waterproof rating here, but will likely meet your needs unless you find yourself running in the rain a lot. I didn't experience any slippage or interruptions during my elliptical session, and I didn't even get any sort of movement when I was moving my jaw with heavier breaths while weightlifting. I didn't have access to a field like I normally do to go full out with the agility drills, but I did my best with an empty hotel gym room. Heavy stepping didn't shake these guys at all, and change of direction and even some dancing couldn't incite any movement. These earbuds stick in and required zero adjustment through any sort of workout that I threw at it. In terms of Bluetooth range, I tried to test this in the gym room, however there wasn't enough space to actually get disconnected. So I tried the hotel hallways, and this footage kinda came out jank. But in summary, I got down the whole hallway and took a turn before it cut out. I estimate that this is around 60 feet indoors, which is pretty solid through walls. I'm sorry that this footage didn't come out better, but at least we got some sort of rating or point of reference to show that these perform well at range. So in terms of connectivity and controls, these are amazing. They don't necessarily have every single control that I'd want on board, but it has basically everything that I would need outside of volume. So single click to play pause, double click for next track, triple click for previous track, and it works extremely well because it has these tactile buttons. See? Can you hear that? I love that. The feedback is amazing. It is great. So I can't really complain too much about that. Again, it would be cool. Oh, sorry, you could also do hold 2 seconds to activate noise canceling or go into transparency mode, so that's also cool. However, I would have liked another function to allow me to change my volume. Not a huge deal breaker, but again, something that would make it a little bit more convenient just so I don't have to have my phone on hand to play around with it. Definitely good for the gym, they don't have it, but overall it's a great experience in terms of controls. Connectivity is really solid. Like I showed you in the sort of demo there, it gets pretty far out, and I didn't really have any issues walking around or anything like that, and there was never really drops in terms of my connection. The only really weird connection quirk that I saw was that if I had not been using music and it's just in my ear, so maybe I pause the music to focus on something and I go back to my music, it would start off on one ear and take a couple seconds and then get into both ears. So that's the only really weird quirk, and let me see if I can get a sample. If I can, you'll hear it here. And I guess in terms of the last thing for connectivity, I would mention that it does have the ability to remember a lot of devices, but it doesn't have the seamless connectivity of a multi-connect like the Jabras or the Soundcore Liberty 3 Pros. It's still usable in the sense of you can just go into your Bluetooth settings and select the device and it'll switch quite easily. You don't have to reinitiate a pairing mode or anything like that. But it would be cooler if I could just, play music on one, it starts, play music on another, and it starts just like the Soundcores. Another thing to notice is that it will prioritize Apple devices, probably, or by design, most likely. So I'm kind of in the hybrid of I use Apple devices, I use Android devices, and it'll always prioritize the Apple devices first. So I have it connected to a laptop, an iPad, and my Google Pixel 6 Pro. And it'll always do the laptop first, and then the iPad, and then my phone. So that's kind of how it prioritizes, but that's probably how it's supposed to work because it is owned by Apple, but that's just a consideration for your set, that it won't be this most seamless operation, but still very usable. Outside of that, I think that's all of the connectivity things until we get into the app later in this review. But let's talk about microphones, because that's going to be really important for you guys' conferencing and conversations with your friends.
Alright, so moving on to mic tests. This is what it would sound in a quiet room. Relatively quiet. That ice maker might actually go off, or you might hear some weird hotel noises, but for the most part, a pretty quiet room. So this should be a good representation of if you guys are taking calls, how clear this sounds. When I've been talking to my clients and my friends, they've been saying that they really like how this comes out, in terms of it comes in very clear. Some have called it perfect. So definitely on par from what I've seen with the AirPods Pro, potentially. So that's a really good indicator. Obviously, they're the same company with Beats and Apple, so there's probably some good technology here in terms of the microphones. But in terms of clarity, you guys really should not have an issue when talking indoors, and people will likely hear everything that you're saying and like how you're coming off in terms of a natural tone. But you guys can tell me how this sounds in the comments. But we should go with outside so we can see how this performs in a more windy condition. I am in Seattle right now, so likely the weather's going to be a little bit rough. So let's go outside and see how that sounds. So this is an outdoor recording of the Beats Fix Pro. There's a lot of cars around. There's some wind coming in as it is a little bit of a crappier day here in Seattle, but hopefully this gives you an understanding of how this will sound outdoors. I'm not sure if there's any sort of wind protection, but I never had any issue with people hearing me when I've been walking outdoors and taking calls. But you guys can tell me in the comments if you're hearing any interruption or it's really hard to break out my voice or anything like that. But now that we've went over microphones, I think it's a good time to actually get into sound quality. So let's go back indoors and do that.
So from a sound perspective, this is not what I would normally expect out of a Beats product. Yes, it's bass boosted, but it's actually quite balanced if you listen to a bunch of different genres. So it does have pretty solid bass, obviously, but the treble and mid still stay clear enough where you can get some separation and get some quality out of that. I do think that they sound better than the AirPods Pros, however, some people may want more punch. That is kind of where it's interesting. So my initial thoughts were like, okay, like the Nerd Trues are around the same price. You would get a little bit better punch and a little bit more configurability with that immersion mode. However, that's just because out of the box, these did sound a little bit cool. However, they warmed up over time. So after I've been doing this cycle of like 3 weeks, because I've been a little bit delayed on this review, they did end up warming up a little bit more, and things got a little bit more warm and rounded as I listened to them, which I wouldn't expect out of earbuds, because usually you need a break in time with like things like planars, right? Big over-ear things that have to displace a lot of air. I usually don't have to have a burn-in time with earbuds, but these ones seem to be getting better with time. So that is something to consider as you guys take these out of the box, especially if it's something you guys are present. Give it some time, you'll probably like the Signature better. But overall, the sound's really, really nice. What I would say is that, there's another competitor out there, obviously the Soundcore Liberty 3 Pro sound great as well. However, I almost prefer these out of the box better. They have a lot more punch. They're a lot less finicky, so I don't have to play around with the EQ as much. And they just work for every genre. I was never really needing or seeing big glaring misses in terms of the music I was listening to. So overall, I think it's a very pleasant and malleable Signature that a lot of people will like. So there's not much for me to say outside of, let's see some samples here so you guys can get your own perception. But I love how they sound. But you can tell me in the comments after you hear these samples. So as we talk about ANC and Transparency mode, there's actually a decent amount to talk about here. They do have the option to shut it all off, so if you're someone who just doesn't want any of that cabin pressure from ANC, you don't want any of the transparency of things coming in, you can shut it completely off and just have that passive isolation there. However, for most people, I believe you'll be switching between ANC and Transparency just because, the world kind of necessitates that at the moment. On the ANC front, I will say that they're commendable, but they're not top-notch by any chance. They do block off your mids and lows very well, so anything that's sort of low droning, sort of consistent noise, it's very good at blocking out. So, like white noise from the cafe, hanging out in a hotel or office room, even in on the streets, as long as the sound is pretty consistent, just cars passing by, it's fine. But if you get like a big car passing by or something that's sort of out of the ordinary, that will kind of come through. And you notice that a lot with like sort of the higher pitch and higher frequency sounds that come from your areas. So like again, like I said, large cars coming through, horns, higher pitched people's voices, clangs. And again, I'm not saying that ANC should block out all of this, but I do think that it should do a better job about like dulling it a little bit. And you'll notice that really when you're doing like proximity tests with the ANC, like if you're closer to the louder or larger sound, you'll notice that those come through, especially if they're inconsistent and not because it uses that sort of adaptive ANC to adjust itself to the surroundings. Any sort of dynamic noise will get caught into and pass through your ears. So keep that in mind if ANC is one of your top priorities. The biggest thing that I saw was if you're far away from the train or if you're hearing a bus from your window, that will kind of be blocked out. But if you're on the train or you're on the bus, you'll definitely hear those noises quite clearly, so it's not going to be perfect as an over ear or some of even the other earbuds like Sony and Bose out there. As we move on to the transparency mode, that's where we get the chef's kiss, because that is the most natural transparency I feel like I've heard, because I never found myself speaking up too loud when I'm speaking with someone with transparency mode on, just because it sounded so natural and it came in very, very clear. So I didn't, elevate my voice because I'm compensating for me not being able to hear my voice. The other things that were very nice about the transparency mode is it gave pretty decent spatial awareness. I kind of knew where everything was. I didn't feel like I was missing out at any details, and it was brought really nicely next to my music as well when that was on. So the transparency mode is something that I really, really like on these, especially when using my one wheel, skating around, walking around. It just made me feel very, very safe on my commute or wherever I was going. So if you find yourself using transparency mode a lot, these are wonderful, and I think you'll like them a lot. It's one of the best transparency modes that I've seen on earbuds, and it's probably due to those mics. As you heard, those mics sound great. They make the transparency sound great as well. But again, let's hear some samples, and you guys can tell me what you guys feel like in the comments. The app is pretty seamless. It connects really easily, especially on Apple. There are some quirks with Android, but nothing that's a deal breaker for me, as the app is pretty simplistic, and after you set it up, you don't really need to use it after that. The app allows you to change the name of the device, change some gestures, and choose your microphone in one earbud setting. There's no EQ here, so again, not much need for this after you set up your gestures. For gesture selection, they simply just let you program a hold function to either noise canceling and voice assistant, or you can do up and down for volume controls. I would like to see more customization here and allow us to have separate functions for the left and right earbud, but it doesn't break my experience too bad. I just program the functions to ANC and voice assistants because I can always use my phone for volume. Transparency would require me to go into the app if I just use the onboards for volume. So as I mentioned, I don't really use the app now to set up the gestures. Wrapping this up, they're good. They're awesome. I like them a lot, and that's coming from an Android guy. The best thing is that these don't really play sides at all. Whether you have an iPhone or Android, these will work for you. Obviously, you get a little bit more synergy with being an Apple person, but no one's gonna have any issues with these headphones. To me, at $220, they're a great value in terms of what you get in terms of quality, things you get in terms of fit, and overall just like no hassle, no nonsense, just it works how it's intended. And man, I just really miss tactile buttons. I've been playing around with headphones a lot, but having that tactile feedback is just so nice, and it's just reliable. As much as I like the concept of touch controls, and there might be less to break there, just having that feedback is great, and it makes me feel like the thing is a lot more reliable in the long term. In terms of fit, these are probably going to end up being my main go-to for working out, just because despite their shape, they are pretty close to head. Obviously, I do have the MW08 Sports, and those do sound better to me, and they have better materials. They look sexier on head, but these are close, and they're cheaper, and I don't have to worry about losing these. And there's a lot of reasons why I might pick these over my MW08s. I do prefer the sound of the MW08s, and that's kind of my flex headphone just because they look so pretty. So they're almost like my walking around headphones. But like if I'm trying to do something really strenuous, you know, I'm expecting to get really sweaty or really wet or something like that with my workout, I'm definitely going to go with these, just because that added wing helps me have some security. And in terms of sound, it's super nice in terms of what you're getting, despite it not punching at quite as nice as the MW08 or like EQs or anything like that. It's still very, very easy to use across genres. Most music works with this. It's not going to be offensive. It doesn't really have any harshness to it. And yeah, it's very, very pleasant. So I think everyone will enjoy these headphones, despite it being a little bit warm on the bass side. But I've never had any issues, and a lot of my friends that have tried these are really warming up and really liking these headphones. So to me, it's an easy recommendation, just because there's so much benefits of having them, and it's probably the best thing that Beats has released in a while. So I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. But yeah, I appreciate that you guys have been sticking around and continuing subscribing, commenting, doing all the things that you normally do on a video that you like and love. It's been cool to see that we still have a community, and I'm jumping in with posts and shorter videos just to make sure that things are still coming out and you guys know that I'm alive and here. But I do appreciate that you guys have been so patient with me with my busy schedule. But with the holidays coming up and like my clients being out, hopefully I have some time to just bang these out. So if everything went to plan, you're probably seeing this Sunday night, or this came out Sunday night, and there should be another review coming before the holidays. What that will be, I'm not sure. It just depends on what I got to, but I do want to get I was planning to get a couple reviews out before the holidays, as well as another review before the end of the year. So definitely stay tuned. But thank you guys so much for sticking with me. This year has been great, and I definitely will do like sort of a year recap to show my appreciation to you guys, but also just show how far this channel has come since the beginning of these strange times. But yeah, anyway, if you could share the video, like it, and do all those sort of things to help grow it as much as we can by the end of the year. And I'll see you guys soon in the next one. But as always, appreciate you. Peace.